what are the roles and the different people that are going to help you to build systems inside your business, and what should they be doing? I think, if I focus in first, I'm going to start off with the business owner. And the business owner needs to believe in what it is that we're doing here. And I learned this from Michael Gerber when I'd sent him an early copy of the SYSTEMology book. And when we caught up and he was giving me some feedback, he said, look, one thing I want you to keep in mind is you can't let the business owner off the hook. And that was like, I was pretty far into the manuscript at that point in time. And a lot of the book is, yeah, let's get the business owner out of the equation. Let the team build everything. And the business owner doesn't need to worry because the entire team's going to systemize it. And the business owner, can focus on just the bit that they're doing it. And while elements of that are true and correct, because you need to find the team members that help to support where the business owner is weak, but the business owner still needs to lead this initiative. They need to believe in it. They have to identify and recognize that systems are important. They need to give them the respect that they need and see them as potentially one of the most valuable assets inside the business, because they're going to have to allocate resources to getting this done. You're going to have to make space and time for this to happen. They need to support the CEO, if you've got one, and say, hey, we need to start to build up this asset. We need to build up our collection of systems and processes. And I understand that's going to take time and money and energy, and I'm happy to allocate those resources. It's not the job of the business owner necessarily to do the documentation. And especially in the early days, the business owner is really busy and they're usually right in the thick of, working inside the business. They don't have space or capacity. But over time, as systems get in place and you build out team, the business owner is freed up where they can actually start to do some of their best work, which is problem solving. And if you get a business owner solving problems and then you build the right support network around them to then help to codify those problems and turn those problem solving skills into permanent systems that become part of this is how we do things here, that's really an important part of the business owner's responsibilities. And we want to make sure that they're comfortable recording tasks. And that's definitely a skill I think the business owner should develop, is how can they capture and make it easy for themselves to develop process and systems. Like they'll have a bigger picture in mind of what the business could be and a vision for that. And their job is to try and then communicate that with the CEO or the operations manager, who can then take that from an idea and then think about, well, what steps need to happen to execute on that. So that's kind of a bit of an understanding of where the business owner plays a role here. I don't want to let the business owner off the hook. And there are many business owners here, so I can already see plenty of you have already sort of stepped up and said, yeah, I can see this is important and it's something we must do, and that's why we're here. And as you grow, you might not have this person yet, but you want to work towards getting a CEO or an operations manager. If it's the business owner's job is to believe it, then the CEO's job is to drive it. They need to manage the team. They've got high follow through. Typically, your CEO will already love systems and processes and be organized. And it's their job to work with the business owner to go from, the vision of what the company is to then bring that into the reality. As you're small, when you're getting started, the business owner oftentimes shares the owner and the CEO role. But really, one of your early steps when you can get there is actually to split that out. Because for you as a business owner, to have a business that works without you, at some point, someone needs to take responsibility. Who is the person who will take responsibility from the business owner? It is that operations person. And they can then make sure that the team meet the standards, follow the systems, continue with systems development. Similarly to the business owner, they're not necessarily the best person to be documenting systems. The actual documentation itself is not necessarily the best use of the time for the highest skilled team members, but capturing what they're doing, codifying what they're doing, working with the systems champion to extract that out is a big part of it. And the CEO needs to really, that they'll value the systems and they'll identify the right team members to work on this. They'll create space for it, and they'll be involved potentially in the systems development, or at least the review of the systems. And they're going to hold team members accountable to ensure those standards are met. So that is another really important role. Next, we've got department heads. And it was good to see, I mean, we've got a mix of all of these types of roles when people typed in what role they fulfill, who is joining us for the program. But the responsibility of the department head is to oversee the team in their particular department. And oftentimes they are the knowledgeable worker, or they're the person who knows how to do a lot. That's how they became a department head. Maybe they've worked up their way to that position. Maybe a couple of team members have got put underneath them that they can oversee and they can help to guide them. So if you think about, what we talk about in the SYSTEMology book, if department heads are knowledgeable workers, there are these higher skilled team members. They are the team members that we really want to make sure that we delegate down tasks that they're doing to more unskilled team members. We try and codify what they're doing, looking for the repetitive and the recurring tasks. We pass them down to lower cost, less skilled team members potentially, to then free up those higher skilled team members who can then do some more of the original thought, or can start to continue to codify or redevelop systems. And they play a very important role in making this happen. So one of the tasks, and we'll learn this when we get through the minimum viable systems, is department heads. I love to set them a little goal to say, you want to have at least 3 to 5 systems documented to a sufficient standard that any new team member that joins in your department can take over that activity. So imagine that from a marketing perspective. The marketing department head might get some systems in place for regularly posting on social media, or emailing out the database, or doing some of the essential recurring tasks that happen inside that department. In sales, it might be, entering a lead into the CRM. It could be following up a particular prospect. Department heads, as they work with systems champions, should identify 3 to 5 systems that can be codified from specifically in their department and can be brought up to a sufficient level that newer team members can go through those systems and quickly add value to the business. A lot of times when new team members start, they might spend the first 3 weeks learning about the business, watching different training videos and just getting information overload, or maybe they're thrown into the deep end and they just kind of have to figure it out as they go. If you can have some systems in place where new team members get started, it's a great way for those new team members to learn that we're a systems-driven company, cut their teeth on important tasks that are actually adding value. And I'm not just doing busy work. These are essential to that particular department, and they can do it as quickly as possible, which is a great way to then start to also figure out who are going to be your star performers. Sometimes that's the best way early on, as someone does a task, and if you give them a system, if they can't complete and successfully execute on a task with a well-defined system, there's very little chance they're going to be able to do something without a system and having to think something up. So it's also a great sort of starting point. So that's your department heads. Then we think about knowledgeable workers. And I mentioned department heads can be knowledgeable workers. There might also be other team members, depending on the size of your team, that have pockets of knowledge. These are team members that might have been with you for a while and they're rock solid on certain recurring tasks. It's Steve in customer support. It's Jenny in accounts who's been there for the last 5 years. It's Bill in sales who's worked with you and he's, one of your best salespeople. He might not be the department head, but he's got a certain amount of knowledge. These are the team members that are, we really need to codify what they're doing. because they're the areas of key person dependency. Similar to department heads, if those team members leave, the knowledge walks out the door. So we need to work with them to extract and organize and delegate down. Not only that, we need to make it easy for them because they're busy. Your best team members, all the ones I've highlighted, or your strongest team members, most experienced team members are often the busiest ones. So part of what we do is we try and make sure it's easy to extract and pull out that IP out of their brain. And then we think about the team members. Now, team members, that's pretty much everyone else. It could be a newer team member or a lower skilled team member. It could be a team member that's just happy where they are. It could be a team member that, you know, doesn't want to move up inside the organization. They might be involved in doing certain aspects, but particularly when they're getting started, you want them learning and just following the process. And it's the systems champion's job early on to also identify who out of the rest of the team is going to support this initiative. You want to identify those that are going to help you to build a systems culture as early as possible. And we want to try and really empower those. And we teach this mantra of always, hey, to move up in our organization, we create a system, codify what you're doing, and then we delegate it down. That's how you move up inside this organization. And then it's not about, you know, some team members, you know, unless you position this correctly for them, they'll think systemizing their business actually puts them at risk. When the reality is, if they can codify and systemize and delegate down, it actually makes them more valuable because they work their way up in the organization. It means they can handle more complex tasks and unique thought, which actually makes them more valuable. So again, getting these types of messages across are really key. Now, when we think about the systems champion is the person that keeps the efforts of building systems front and center. They support the team members. They make it easy. You want them to be curious and organized and detail orientated. Sometimes this might be a dual role initially when it first gets started. You might be doing a couple of different things. Over the longer term, though, we want to have this as someone's primary responsibility, like ideally. And ideally, you want them on staff. You might get them trained up in SYSTEMology and have them understand what the team does and an understanding of your software stack and an understanding of how this is going to come together and how do we make this easy for them. They're going to be the ones that need to make decisions around, well, to how much detail am I going to document this system? Is this a system that needs, you know, not very much detail because a highly skilled team member is most likely going to execute on it? Or is this one of the 3 to 5 tasks that potentially is going to get passed down? So I'm going to need great detail for it. And those distinctions, and I don't need to go into that particular role in too much. I know we've got a lot of systems champions here. We've got a whole session dedicated for the systems champion. So we will, you know, in the next session, we'll talk about, like it's the business owner is the next session. So we'll give you position descriptions, job ads, qualities to look for. And then the session after that, we'll actually talk about the responsibilities of that person. The other one I've got here is the documenter. And I didn't mention this in the book because I didn't want to just keep introducing too many new characters as people are kind of getting their head around this. Initially, oftentimes the documenter is the systems champion, but just park it in your brain that it is possible to split out the documentation piece and get a separate documenter. So the systems champion might be, you know, working with the team. The documenter may or may not be someone else. It typically is as the team starts to grow or as you really embrace the idea of systems and building a systems-driven culture. But the documenter is just someone who watches the video. They might draft up the first version of the system and then they share it with the systems champion so that they can make sure, you know, it's up to standard before it gets introduced to the rest of the team. And then the last one I'll mention here is the SYSTEMologist. I know a few of you have already met some of the SYSTEMologists. There's a few that are attending, so they might be in some of your breakout rooms. This is someone who's trained up and licensed by us at head office to deliver SYSTEMology. They can speed up the process, especially at the start. Like when you got, really poor systems habits, the systemologist can come in there. They can, like a systems coach, but it's better than a coach because they do a lot of the work themselves. They'll do the first wave of documentation. They'll create the gold standard by which everything else can get sort of measured against. They can train up your systems champion. So depending on where you're at, you might work with a systemologist to speed up. It just depends on what sort of level of support and how quickly you want to move to really bring this to reality. But they are really the key people that are going to play an important role in making this happen. Now, I love the 80-20, and we talk about this a lot. I mean, the critical client flow is the 80-20 of the business systems. If we apply the 80-20 here, the ones that you really have to get down, we need to get super clear on the business owner and what those responsibilities are. We need to get clear on the systems champion. And then we also need to think about the team. Because if we speak to the team, that'll meet and hit some of the requirements of your department heads and knowledgeable workers. If we talk to the business owner, we can kind of cover off some of the CEO stuff. But those are the three real tracks that we need to kind of like dig into